Welcome to the podcast, Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. I am honored to have our guest, Jenny Dreizen, for the interview. Some leaders don't grow up in the spotlight. They grow up quietly observing, listening, and learning how to support others long before anyone notices them. Jenny Dreizen is one of those leaders. As a teen, Jenny was smart, capable, and often overlooked. Floating socially, navigating the challenges of belonging, and learning early what it feels like to be told to stay quiet and just get through. While she didn't always feel seen, she was eventually recognized as a natural helper, a role that hinted at the leadership qualities she'd be developing all along. Today, Jenny is the co-founder and COO of Fresh Starts Registry, the world's first divorce registry and a leading platform reimagining how people navigate major life transitions. Her work is rooted in a simple but powerful belief. People deserve to feel seen, celebrated, and supported as whole humans, not just defined by one chapter of their lives. This conversation explores how those early experiences shape Jenny's deep commitment to helping people move through change with dignity, clarity, and compassion. You're listening to Today's Leaders, from Teens to Titans. Hi, I'm Lorraine Connell, a teen leadership coach. I transitioned from teaching chemistry to coaching teens in leadership, helping them realize they can do hard things. We've often believed that leadership is an innate trait, but it's actually a skill that you build and improve. On this show, you'll meet today's leaders who share their teenage experiences, revealing how they developed confidence, direction, and the tools to become the leaders they are now. You'll discover how you or the teens in your life have the potential to become confident leaders, even if it doesn't seem possible. Welcome, Jenny. It's so great to have you.
Well, it is an honor and a joy to be here with you today, Lorraine, of course.
Awesome. Will you do me and my audience a favor and take a trip down memory lane, sort of sharing with us who you were as a teenager and how those experiences shaped you into the leader we see in front of us today?
I would love to do that. So when I was 13 or 14, I can never remember exactly, I went from a lower grammar school that I had been at since I was 3 to a high school that was bigger. And I say bigger because we went from having 16 kids in my class in my year to 96, about 100. So small schools all around. And my grammar school experience and middle school experience had been tough. I was not liked. I was not accepted, which was always really confusing for me because I was like, I've been here since I was 3. Like, how did I get to the party too late? And so I went to this high school and it felt a lot bigger. It was a small private school, another small private school on Long Island, but it felt a lot bigger. And I think in a lot of ways, I had a fairly typical freshman year experience. You get in with a certain group of people and you sort of start trying to find your sea legs a little bit. The girls that I became friends with, they're very sweet people now, but I think then it was like not the right crowd for me. And there was just a lot of drama and a lot of fighting, and it felt like too much for me. And I sort of pulled back pretty quickly. And I think that the thing that always sort of typified my experience in school was I always felt like I was a bit looked over. I felt like I was often like the second smartest kid in the class. When they went to go pick a valedictorian, they were like, well, it was up to you and this other girl, and her grades were like a little bit better. Like it was always like that. And so I think that I was always a little bit overlooked, and that allowed me to fly under the radar a little bit too, which allowed me to, have whatever experiences I had. But there was always a tension between a social life and a academic life. And I never really had problems with the academics, but I think I always struggled with feeling mentored, with feeling seen, with feeling like somebody cared. And I do have to say that the school psychologist I think by the time I was a junior, so like my third year of high school, he sort of took notice. And you mentioned in the intro this experience of being a natural helper. I don't know, is that an organization you're familiar with, Lorraine? Natural Helpers? Okay, I don't know if it still exists. I don't know where it was, but it was a national organization, or I think it was national. I don't know. At least we'll say it was regional organization at the time. And the premise of the organization was to seek out people who other students already came to naturally and support them, basically. You look back at it and you're like, was the school trying to get us to narc on people? I'm not really sure, but it meant that once a month or week, or I don't know how often, they would give us pizza and we would go into a conference room and basically we could bring issues. So if I had a friend come to me and be like, my mom's abusing me, I could say, I have this thing and I don't really know what to say to this person. And there would be teachers and students there that would help us work through that. It also meant that we would go on retreats. And I think that being seen, because I don't think that a lot of people would have understood that I was a natural helper. I think that a lot of other teachers would have just overlooked me. I think I was quiet. I've always been sort of quiet in school, and I've always been just a good student. So it's like I wasn't the squeaky wheel, right? I always laugh. When I was in the fourth grade, I was in class one day and my friend Austin was talking a lot, and they said, well, we'll put him next to Jenny because she's really quiet, which is a horrible thing to do to both of us. But we talked because I just wanted someone to talk to. And then they had now twice the problem because we were chatty, and Austin and I are still very good friends. And so like that was kind of my experience. Was it wasn't that I was quiet. It wasn't that I was, not the squeaky wheel. I was that I was taught to put my head down and work. And if nobody was going to talk to me, I certainly wasn't going to have a conversation with myself. So I think being sort of chosen as a natural helper was a big deal to me. And going to these conferences was a big deal to me because it allowed me to feel like somebody had seen me and sort of taken me on board. And that was important for my experience. And I still, like that school psychologist, I asked him to officiate my wedding back when I was engaged in the US. And I used to babysit his kids. I think having the couple of people that did, I felt like, see me was really important to my experience, because I think so often I just felt like these kids would get picked to go to do this special thing. And I would be like, I didn't really understand why. And then there was also, there was a big social element to it, which was my parents paid a not insignificant amount of money for me to go to that school. And when things would come up, this perspective was very much like, well, we don't pay for you to go there to have friends. Which, God, I hope my mother's not listening to this. But like later, like my therapist was like, well, school is a social institution and you're supposed to be learning about that. And I think that was hard because there was a real tension there. And it was hard. I think in retrospect, my mother was saying that to protect me. I think that she didn't know what to do when girls are being really mean to your child, for no reason that you could figure out. It was tough. It was not a huge group of people to be friends with. One second, I need water. It was not a lot to choose from. And I don't think I found my people there. I don't think I found many of my people there. I ended up becoming really good friends with this guy who was like my best friend. We decided not to go to college together because we realized it would be really unhealthy. Everybody thought we were dating. He's been living with his boyfriend for the last 20 years. Him and his boyfriend just came and we went on a trip with my husband and I. Like, we're still very close. And so that got me through. Having, again, one person that saw me got me through. My sister Olivia was 2 years older than me, and she was bullied really horribly in school. And so there was also that, which I was aware of her bullies and I was defensive of her. So there was a lot going on, but I think all the teachers saw was just a good student that never gave them any trouble. And I would have loved for a female teacher, I think, to really take me under her wing and be like, what can we do? How do we write your applications? And it's felt like other kids were getting that, and it felt like I wasn't. My college advisor is not a good person. She stood up and spoke for Brett Kavanaugh later in life when he was getting his Supreme Court seating. So I think if you can imagine that kind of person that's advising you, it's not a feminist perspective. And I had little things happen to me. The teachers used to make fun of the words that I used in school. I had a teacher that would make fun of big words when I would use them in class. So there was like a weird tension going on there. And so I think I felt really overlooked. And I know that I walked with that into college. I felt also overlooked, and I felt like I couldn't get a mentorship. I couldn't have anybody that sort of was willing to go to bat for me. And that made me want to go to bat for everyone.
Yeah. I guess my biggest question,
Yeah.
overlooked is the word that we're
Yeah.
leaning into here, is
Yeah.
how do you think that that was really communicated to you by the adults in your life, right? So,
Yeah.
like, it wasn't like they literally chose others over you. That's what we perceive, right? And so, whether we as educators or not are aware of what we're doing or our implicit biases, what were the messages that you received specifically from some of these adults?
So, like, very specifically, my advisor, I can't remember which advisor it was, once said that I needed to grow a thicker skin, which I thought was like, I still think is very insensitive. I don't think that that was the problem. I think the problem was that they weren't able to control the classroom and control these boys that would say really nasty things that were out of line given the conversation that we were having. And I think that being told to grow a thicker skin when you're a 16-year-old girl, and I don't know if other listeners were the same as me, but I felt like an open wound. I did need to grow a thicker skin, but telling me to grow a thicker skin was not the way to do it, you know? And it was like, I think that made me feel overlooked because it was like, oh, you see all the beauty and the joy and the thoughtfulness and the creativity in me and what you think is you need to grow thicker skin and not maybe I need to be able to control my classroom a little bit more. And so that made me feel very overlooked because it didn't feel reflective of who I was, you know. And I did have other teachers that would say, write lovely things in my report cards, but that was very clear and explicit. And remember, my mom and I were like pissed about that when that happened. But I think it was the being looked over for opportunities, being passed over for things like that, being just sort of looked past, or there was almost an implicit feeling to me of like, well, Jenny doesn't need to do that. Like, Jenny doesn't want to do that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, no, I'd like to be asked. And so that was also prevalent in sort of the whole dynamic, but definitely the implicit of like, we're not going to ask her to participate for whatever reasons. Who knows? Who, you know,
Right.
but I knew that my grades were good. And, you know, I was always a high performer.
Yeah.
And I was always very involved in class and I spoke up a lot. And so it was always a little confusing to me why I never quite, I mean, so stupid, but like we have an honors board in our high school and you can make it junior year, or you can make it senior year. And I made it senior year, but I was talking to another friend of mine recently and I was like, why did we not both make it junior year? Like, what were, you know, like, it's that kind of thing where it's like, my grade, I wasn't allowed to take any more APs. Like, they stopped me from taking more APs. So how was I, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm sure scores or whatever. And it was things like that where it's like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong to sort of be looked over. And the frustrating thing was that I felt like I was looked over for academic opportunities, but I was always caught when I was out of dress code. And other girls wouldn't be. And I'd be like, well, why am I being, you know, in trouble for this when that girl's wearing a way shorter skirt than I am? So I felt a little bit like, why are you only picking, I don't do anything bad, you know, why are you only picking up on that? And little things like, I remember once I wasn't in school one day or something, and the next time I was in school or a week later or something, they were like, this is the people that need to go to detention today. And they read the list and I was on the list and I never did anything like that. So I was like, I went up to the class advisor and I was like, why am I on this list? And she was like, well, you didn't respond to roll call or something one day, so we just assumed you were cutting class. And I wanted to be like, you know me. Like, that kind of overseeing, like, it's me. If you were worried about that with me, why would you not just come to me? This is so out of character. And I felt like because I wasn't going to make a big stink, because I wasn't going to be dramatic about it, they kind of just threw me wherever they needed to.
Yeah.
And they did whatever they needed to do. And I was like, but I felt disrespected. I felt like, why am I not given the same, you know, chances as other people, both in the good and the bad, of like, hey, I'm just going to check in with this person to make sure she didn't just cut school one day. I got on a bus and drove 40 minutes every day. How was I going to cut school? Like, I didn't know how. When we had senior cut day, I went to school. I was one of 3 people at school. I was not the kid that was going to do that. And even those things, like, I expected the administration to be a little bit more appreciative, and they were not. So things like that.
Yeah, and it's almost like a combination of both being overlooked and completely misunderstood.
Understood. Yeah, yeah.
And I think that really speaks to feeling like, where do I belong? I can't connect
Yeah.
socially with this group. I don't have a lot of options of people to connect with. My teachers think I'm somebody that I'm clearly not.
Right.
And when opportunities arise, they've already made a decision that I'm not the right fit for whatever
For
reason.
whatever reason.
And you don't understand why you're being not chosen.
And I think the frustrating part was sometimes it felt like that reason was that because my mom wasn't going to make a stink about it. Because my parents were kind of like, whatever happens, like they were protective and they were good, but they weren't going to come in and be like, no, my daughter needs to be on this or that's not how we roll as a family. And so if you have that, then suddenly you don't have apparently this advocate that everybody else had. And I think that that was part of it too. It was like, yes, I was being overlooked for my academic like achievements. And then I was also not really fully understood, which was confusing to me because I was like, I've never shown up differently. Like I've always showed up exactly the same way. And yeah, and then you just feel very unseen and very like literally, where do I go? Do I go to the photo studio or do I go to the science lab? Like, where am I supposed to be? And I am talented in many ways, right? So I did feel at home in a lot of places, but I think, I'm a person that often feels comfortable in a lot of places, but not like I belong.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I almost feel like you presented a challenge for the stereotype, right? So you were this more shy, quiet student who would sometimes say something
Mhm.
that was out of the norm. And so I am reflecting on the experiences that you're sort of describing and saying, I wonder, and I'm not really wondering because I'm pretty sure it's true, that you intimidated your intelligence, right? So I think of the teacher who made fun of the words that you said, right? So there was a lot of intimidation of your intellect. And so
Mhm.
to keep you and put you in your place,
Yeah.
they would belittle you and like kind of make you conform into a stereotype that they had in their head, but it
Mhm.
wasn't the stereotype that you belonged in again.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. And I think there was a will that people don't understand that's within me. And I think that they didn't quite know what to do with that all the time. I think that people thought I would be a lot more compliant than I am. I think of an experience once where I don't even remember what the context was, but I spent like weeks or months. I worked with the school and I was selling pins for Susan G. Komen.
If you're listening to this podcast, you're already part of something bigger. You're part of my advocacy team. Leaders of Today and Peers Not Fears exist to amplify voices at the age when so many of us were having moments that shaped who we became, sometimes in silence, sometimes without support. These conversations are about what happens when voices are heard earlier, when leadership is named, and when young people are reminded that they matter. As we move from building these programs to sharing them more widely, my ask is simple. Help us carry these stories forward. Share an episode, talk about the work, pass it along to someone who works with youth, supports teens, or believes in the power of early leadership. Because when we normalize telling these stories and believing in young voices, we don't just change individual lives, we change what's possible.
Like to raise money for breast cancer awareness, which is so weird because I just have no idea how I got involved in that or where the impetus of that was. But I was baking. I was like, if you buy a pin, you get a cupcake or something. And if you have a pin on this certain day, you can wear jeans because it was a dress code school. So you could wear jeans. So you're like buying a dress down day. And I made brownies every day for like weeks and I would bring them into school. And at some point, some girls who maybe ran a breast cancer like awareness club came up to me. They were younger than me, a year younger, and with an advisor, with a teacher. They were like, we want half that money. And I was like, no. And I think that they thought because they were popular girls and I was the floater, I had no social status. That's what I would say. Like I had just no social status, not in a bad way, just like,
Right.
I just floated around. I think they thought I would just comply. And the faculty advisor was surprised. And I said, the people thought they were donating money that was going to go directly to the cause. They didn't sign on for that. Like that, where I think people just sort of, because I came off as a certain way. And, like I said, I was quiet around the right people. I wasn't going to talk out of turn like, in that way. I like to be in rooms and celebrated in rooms where I'm invited. I think that people thought I was going to comply, and I think people thought I was going to be an easier sort of target than that. And they were actually surprised. It's such a weird story. It's like, why would you walk up to somebody and ask them that? I didn't even know these girls, really.
Yeah, and that brings me around to going to bat for others, right?
Yeah.
So, which is where you find yourself today.
Mm-hmm.
And it now is becoming really, really apparent and clear how that feeling of being overlooked, misunderstood, and being an advocate when you saw that happening for others has led you down this path and connected specifically to your older sister, Olivia.
Yeah. I think so much of what we do is about advocating for others and using our voice because we can, and using our platform because we have it to speak loudly and say things that people don't always want to hear and that other people really need to hear because it makes them feel seen. You and I had a conversation this morning about like bringing younger people into our networking group. And I think being able to do whatever you can, make any connections you can for people. It's such a small thing for so many of us, but it's such a big thing and it makes you feel so seen. And the times in my life when somebody has introduced me to somebody or helped me along in my path, it feels so significant. And you're always grateful for those people. And I think as much as we can do it, I mean, Olivia and I never really thought about the childhood wound of it all, but like, I think so much of what we love to do is bring connection, because I think that we often felt very disconnected. We were traveling an hour and a half on a bus every day, across 40 minutes, which, you're faffing around on the bus in the morning. We were the first ones on, last ones off. And we were very disconnected from our community. If we wanted to do a community event, like we had to ask our parents if we could go, and they would have to drive 40 minutes out of their way to get there. And so I think connection and community and building a community that doesn't require like access or driving permission, like anything like that, that's really big to us, because we don't want people to feel disconnected in the same way that we felt disconnected from that community, for sure.
Well, and I think having become a parent of a kid who, needs to be transported here, there, and everywhere, like it wasn't just a 40-minute out of their way, right? Like I, as a parent, want to drop you off so that I can have some time without you, but that means I have to drive 40 minutes somewhere else or whatever. It's like that commitment for your parents made your connection to that community virtually impossible. And yet we invited you, we put you in that school in thinking that we were creating a community for you. And like, there's lots and lots of layers to that. And community, as you said, you and Olivia have created a community that really does speak up for those who don't have a voice yet. And I think it's so powerful to watch you work on your end to elevate Olivia, who really is like, I'm just going to say it like it is. And you have like created this community for her to shout these things really, really loudly, and the connections that get me. You're so right about how insignificant it feels for the person making the connection, but how powerful it feels for the person who receives it.
Yeah. I laugh. I don't know if you ever saw Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash movie, but June Carter says they used to take her out of the crib and take her pacifier out of her mouth and let her hoot and holler on stage, and then they would put her back in the crib. And then like, that's you, Olivia. Like, I take you out of the crib, I just like put you on stage. She's like, say what you need to say. So I appreciate that. Yeah. I just believe in you give good, you get good. And if you don't, you get information. And I don't have any constraints. Like, there's been so few times where I've been like, I don't want to make that connection right now. And usually it's because I don't trust the person. Like, I want to see how that person fleshes out before I connect them with somebody else, but it's like, so often it means it's nothing. It's sending an email. I mean, and especially if you got your emails down well, like, it's not a big deal. And to make that connection and to connect wonderful people in your community, I think that we so often want to support our kids and our people in those connections. But like you said, it is complicated for parents to make those things. And I think there are so many things things I removed myself from, I sat out of, because I'm the middle child, right? I had an older sister that was, in her junior, senior years going off to college. I had a little brother. We weren't at the same school, but it's also hazy now. And I had a little brother, and there were so many things that I just didn't put myself up for because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I wouldn't call it so much as a jealousy, but there is definitely like a conversation that I, in my own head of my brother got to do a lot more stuff, because by the time he was in high school, he was the only child at home. And so, he got to do a lot more stuff. And there was so many things that I just was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do that. And you add in, I was away every other weekend at my dad's, right? There's so much going on there. And I think that I'm very grateful for the friends that I had. And I'm very grateful for the friends that I have. I mean, I'm still so close with my friend Audie and my friend Laura. We weren't as close in high school, but we became close after high school in a different way. And now we've been friends for nearly 30 years. It's coming on. And that's crazy to me. And my friend Nate, and there's these other people, but it's funny. Like, I know I wasn't around most people. I wasn't fully myself in high school too, because how could you be? And I've recently become closer with a friend of mine from high school named Pam. And she messaged me the other day. She goes, I had no idea how funny you were in high school. She said, have you always been this funny? And I was like, I think I have. Yeah. I said, I think I have. I said, but I wasn't going to just be spouting it out everywhere. Like, I was funny to the people that knew me. And I think I learned pretty quickly not to talk too much in rooms where I wasn't appreciated. But I do think that it narrows your scope when you're doing that. So yeah, it has its pluses and minuses.
What about, when did you start to feel seen? I mean, you said that junior year where you were selected, but like, when did you really start to feel like, no, people in my network or my community now, they see me and I'm really who I am?
Like 2021 when we started Fresh Starts? No, I actually think when I started my first adult job, which was I worked in large corporate tech events, and I started there in 2015. I remember going in and everybody there had really weird senses of humor. And I was like, oh, these are my people. I got that job because my then boyfriend's friend, who was also my friend, worked at the company. And again, it was one of those things. I've been on podcasts. I was on a podcast last night talking about why he wasn't the one for me. But he was out for a drink with our friend Steve. And Steve said, we need a graphic designer and I'm not trained. And my ex said, Jenny can do that. And they hired me. And so again, like making that connection, like he put me up for that job. And I think going to that, and that was the first time I felt like appreciated for what all I could do. And then it's steps and plateaus is what I would say. So that was a step and that was great. And then a plateau for a long time. And then I went freelance. And then I think I stepped up again when I went freelance because I started finding the right people. But I think ultimately, like working with my sister, doing the work that we do, right? Going from working for large corporate events where I'm training like pharmaceutical reps on Ozempic, which is a thing that I used to do. And people are like, Ozempic is new. I'm like, it's not. I was working events from it in 2016. Training people to what I do now, which is helping people navigate that's one of the toughest transitions of their lives. It feels in this world where everything feels very crazy right now. I get to wake up and do that every day. That makes me feel seen. Going to, having our community events and having people say such lovely things to us and making connections. And when I see that Kelsey is doing an event with Erin at the listening lounge, I'm like, oh my God, like that makes me feel seen. And then I think ultimately like working with my sister and also like finding the people. I mean, my husband makes me feel seen in a way that I never knew you could feel seen. So it was a journey, I would say, starting in 2015. And it's funny learning because I think about this sometimes. Like I went to NYU, which it's a huge school, but I was a religious studies major, which is a tiny department. And I really didn't have an advisor. So like my thing of like not being advocated for, not having a mentor, like continued. But then I think about my Russian professor. I took Russian and she loved me. And she wrote me emails and letters after I graduated. And then I think, was it that I wasn't advocated for, or was that I just didn't know how to handle it at the time? And that I didn't see it. Because like, I'm sure I could call Arena right now and she'd be like, Genevieve, my Genevieve. Like, she'd be so happy to hear from me. But I don't think I understood what was happening at the time.
Well, and I also think you called it an open wound, like grow a thicker skin. I think it's hard when you are in that place of feeling so exposed, so vulnerable, and you have somebody who's willing to do the thing that you really need. Like, you do have to close that wound a little bit to receive it. And so it's a very challenging metaphor because it's so challenging for this to happen, and I think of the work that I'm doing today, which is creating that mentorship, creating that partnership at the ages that we're talking about. It's undeniably the need that is missing.
It is. And I think you're bringing together some thoughts in my head, but I don't think anybody really knew what to do with me. And I think that they still don't know what to do with me. I think I'm really creative minded, but I also am a math and science person. I don't think they knew where to put me. And I think that we had a call with the head of student life from our high school the other day, and she was so lovely. And I said to her, if you know any girls that want to maybe start a company but don't know what they want to do. I never thought starting a company. I was like, I'm going to be a mom. I'm just going to be a mom. I'm not worried about it. Right. And people were like, aren't you going to have a job? And I was like, I'll have a job. And I think that if I can reach out to one girl that's like, I really like coding. And also I really like to make little boxes, out of clay. Those are my people, because let's talk. And I said to her, it's so easy for schools to be like, this person works at JP Morgan Chase and this person is a lawyer. There are so many other jobs out there, and not all of us are going to become lawyers. And so many of us do, but there are also other ones of us who need lawyers and who need to find mentors in the world that are not, I did not have a straightforward trajectory in any capacity. And I love that. And I would love to connect with any other, probably girls. I mean, just generally given my skill set, but not necessarily just girls, where they feel the same way, where it's not so clear what they're going to do. And they want to, study sociology or religious studies or classical studies. They're not going to go for business school. That's not who I'm going to connect with. Or they did go to business school, but they also maybe want to start a ceramics business. I want so badly to foster that in other people. And if I can reach any of those people, come to me, let's talk. I don't know what I can offer, but maybe something.
Well, and just a visual, it's possible. Maybe I don't know what I want to do, but you land somewhere.
There are more jobs than banker, lawyer, doctor, or teacher.
No.
I think about this all the time. They really talk to us those are the only things that you can do. And it's oh, you want to be an actress? Well, there's only so many actresses in the world. Okay, well, honestly, go look at the pharmaceutical companies again. They need actors in their videos. All these people. Oh, you want to get into sound design? Well, musicians don't make a lot of money. Okay, well, go work in a sound studio. Go be an acoustical engineer. There's so many other jobs out there. And I think we just trash on what kids want to do with their lives because we're not creative, and we don't think creatively about what that skill set can become.
Well, and again, it comes back to what are we tasking of these educators and what are we tasking of schools, right? So a school is designed for a very minimal function. And if we look at the options that schools offer kids academically, it's very limited because we have only a few tracks in our mind. And now, like we saw with COVID, how many people left their regular jobs, created these new jobs? The jobs that these kids are graduating today have not been invented. And so it's when are we going to recognize that there is a change among us and the kids are really the path through? Let's let them lead us.
Big time.
So I think it's really an exciting moment for you to share that I'm looking to connect with people who don't fit the norm or don't know where they're going, because I think many of us recognize that if there had been somebody back in that moment in our lives when we were kind of floundering, you want to be that person. I want to be that person that just says it's possible, right?
It's possible, right?
Let me all
right. What do you want to do? What do you like? What lights you up? What do you not want to do? How do you not want to spend your day? There's a lot that I'm putting into books that I'm waiting on the contracts for. But there's a lot that I have to say in the world that could be very useful. And I think on a one-to-one, if you are a teenage girl or in your early 20s and you are listening to this and you're I want to do something that's outside the norm. I want to blow up my life and move to the other side of the world. I want to start a company or do something that nobody's ever done. Or, by the way, I don't want to do any of that and I just kind of want a job. I'm here. I've done all of it. Yeah.
So how can people connect with you, Jenny?
Yeah. So you can find me at Genevieve Dreizen on Instagram, which is quite a long name. So you can also find me at Jenny Dreizen on Instagram, and it'll get you to the other one. But you can find me at Genevieve Dreizen, and Jenny at freshstartsregistry.com will get you to me too. And if you have any questions, if you want to reach out, I don't know, maybe I have a connection, if you just want somebody to talk to about how you're supposed to go through the world when you don't feel like you really fit in any of the models or the rules or the boxes. I very much feel like I feel like every time I try to live a conventional life, it does not work for me. So if you feel like that, I'm here, and I'm coming on 40 and I got some lessons under my belt and I'd love to share them.
That's amazing. And Jenny and I sort of first met at a virtual networking group that has now become something that she and her sister Olivia host. It's called the Tuesday Table, and it meets every Tuesday, 9:30 Eastern via Zoom. So we'd love to invite anybody in any stage of their journey to come pop in and get to know the amazing community that you've created.
Thank you, Lorraine.
Are you ready to help the young people in your life unlock their inner strength and step confidently into leadership? The new workbook from Peers Not Fears, Your Voice Matters, Uncovering Your Unique Leadership. It's designed to help teens see the leader in themselves, step by step. It's not just a workbook. It's the first step towards a ripple effect that could change lives. Let's turn today's teens into tomorrow's titans. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit from this conversation. Together, we can support our teens in building healthy, positive relationships and become leaders of tomorrow. Until next time, I'm Lorraine Connell, and this is Leaders of Today, Teens to Titans.